Positive, positive and negative. So I was in a yoga class yesterday, and of course, positive and negative comes up, and it's talked about a lot. And it's also in coordination with the channels of the body, the Ida and the Pingala. And the Ida is the receptive energy of the body. It runs up the left side of the spine. Pingala is the positive, active. Ida is negative. Ida is more emotional. Pingala is more body oriented, active. And I was thinking about positive, negative because a lot of people have associations with positive being good and negative being bad. But if we can look past that story, how do we make that cohesive, right? Because in actuality, feminine is negative, masculine energy is positive. So how can we understand what negative and positive is without it just simply being good and bad? And how I was thinking about it is negative energy is receptive, right? If you think about feminine, you're thinking about taking in, right? Receiving. That's what the feminine, that's what, if you think about the sexual interaction between masculine, feminine, masculine is penetrative, feminine is receptive. And so the Ida is very receiving energy, and then we translate that into emotions and we feel what's going on through what we perceive in our sensations. And positive is very what we translate that into in action. And so it's just receptive versus, it's like giving versus taking, or taking versus giving. And if you receive too much, if you take too much, then that's what we know of as bad, right? Because a negative act is one that takes from others. So it's almost like an amplified receiving. And so that's, yeah, we've got prana, apana. um Sydney Zekman just commented, which is also like prana is the energy, apana is the it's the downward outflowing detoxification pathway of the body. The prana is coming in, the apana is going out. So if you're negative in nature out there in the environment, we associate that with receiving too much, and positive is giving. And I think that's just amazing how that all matches up, and how you can be too much of one or the other. If you guys have any questions or want to come live on Instagram, come live, but put questions in the comments. Something I always get asked about, or people always try to argue about, is this concept. Oh, actually, there's two really interesting concepts. Number one is toxic femininity, toxic masculinity. We all, that's not the interesting part. Somebody introduced me to something that I never heard before, which is toxic positivity. That's one interesting topic. But I also really like the concept of the Mandela effect, because that's essentially how I live my entire life, under the construct of what the Mandela effect suggests. And it suggests that we are jumping realities. And the Mandela effect normally is associated with, like, maybe we have jumped from one reality to another. But the way that I know it is that we jump realities continuously throughout life, and that every new moment is a new reality. So every time I snap my fingers there, we entered into a new reality. And every single one of those snaps that you just heard happened at the same time as this snap right now. So those snaps are happening now, but just in a different reality than we are in this snap. And since we're in different realities every single moment, each reality has its own projected past and future, because the past and future, technically, not technically, under this gnosis, doesn't exist ever. And everything is always happening now. So we're instead of in one stable reality, which is kind of how we're taught and how we perceive things, that we're in one stable reality traveling through time, right? And in this reality, there's a past which happened in this reality long ago, or and there's a future in this reality that hasn't happened. And how I construct and I rely on because of the faith in this is that the past is happening. So my construction is different than what I just explained. The past is happening now, but it's not really the past, right? Because it's now. So the reality that I came from is happening now. The reality that I'm going to is happening now. And those don't really exist in physical form. They're more like potentials. Okay, it's like the computer in front of me. The got computer screens in front of me. They have access to everything on the internet, and they have access to things that I can't even think of right now. But if I were to focus in on them, pull up information onto the screen, then I see them. I get to experience them. And so that's kind of how I think about the past and future is that they're potentials. And the past is fluid, it's changeable, and so is the future. Just like I can change the components of what comes up on the computer screen, which is how things like the Mandela effect happen. Because as we shift in this present reality, maybe we steer to realities that are much different than the reality we were in 20 years ago. And so the past of this current reality doesn't match the actual reality that we were in 20 years ago. A lot of it's going to be similar, right? Like gravity kind of still works the same way. We still switch light bulbs on by hitting the light switch up. We turn them off by hitting the light switch down. But there are some things that are different, like family names have completely changed. You guys remember Oscar Mayer Wiener? So does anybody in the comments remember Oscar Mayer Wiener? There's even a song, right? And I'm 40 years old. So if you're like 20, you might know that whole thing as a different name. Because in LA right now, there's a giant hot dog that drives around and it says Oscar Mayer Wiener, Mayer. I don't remember the exact spelling of the other way, but it definitely wasn't Oscar Mayer Wiener. So that entire company, that entire family lineage has a different name than I'm certain that it wasn't Oscar Mayer Wiener 20 years ago when I was traveling through that reality into this reality now. But in this reality, it's Oscar Mayer Wiener. I wish I were an Oscar Mayer Wiener. Yeah, exactly. That was something like that. I'd love to be an Oscar Mayer Wiener. Right. So Meyer, Oscar Mayer Wiener. How do I grow hairs like that? Hit me up. I've got the nutrition plan for that. I drove Ford cars because my dad drove Ford cars. And the Ford logo has changed. If you guys aren't familiar with that, if you're familiar with Ford, like let's say you drove a Ford as like my first car was a Ford Probe. All right, my dad's truck was he drove Ford F-150s. And so what is that? 24 years ago when I'm 16 years old, like I kind of remember the logo, right? And the F has this weird freaking curly Q now, and it's weird, and it never existed, but it exists now. All right. So what does that mean? How can we use this? How can we use the Mandela effect? Like, how is it usable? Because it's not just like a thing that we can just talk about at parties. Did you know that it's in Field of Dreams? It doesn't say if you build it, blank will come, right? That's usually how the conversation should start. We shouldn't just tell people, "Do you know that it's not if you build it they will come anymore, that it's if you build it he will come?" Or you shouldn't say, "Did you know Darth Vader doesn't say, 'Luke, I am your father' anymore? He says, 'No, I am your father.'" We should actually just have like fill in the blank. Like, what is this line? Blank mirror on the wall from Snow White. What do you every time I say fill in the blank mirror on the wall, what does it say? And everybody says mirror, mirror on the wall. But in this reality, that's not what it is. It's a magic mirror on the wall for some weird reason. Anyways, so how we actually use that is that it fits into what I was saying. We're traveling through realities. We're not traveling through time in one reality. And if we're traveling through realities, then that means that reality itself is fluid. It's not a stable thing that is unshiftable. And so then the question then is, how do we steer ourselves through reality? Because if we travel through realities as opposed to time, the important thing is like, well, where's the steering wheel? Right? Like, where's the steering wheel to travel through realities? If you guys are asking questions, the comments are going really, really fast. And I've got Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube live going right now. I've got two phones, and I've got a Firefox uh, internet browser and a Facebook internet browser. Facebook can ask me questions easily. I can see them on YouTube easily. TikTok, put it in the question bar if there is one. I don't even really know how to use TikTok. And Instagram question bar thing at the bottom, please. So, how do we steer through realities? Because, like, we had to learn how to walk, right? We had to learn how to ride a bike. We had to learn how to drive, and those are all to transport us through this physical reality. So when we're thinking or talking or figuring out how to steer realities itself, it does there is a learning process. And what I've come to realize is that alignment gives you power. So it's not just like, so example to the bike thing, you actually have to learn how to balance on the bike before you can actually steer the bike, right? Because you have to be able to be in the game before you actually can maneuver the bike into the direction that you want. It's the same thing with steering through realities. You don't just get to do it. You have to have developed some sort of personal power to give you the ability to steer through the reality. And that personal power comes with being able to have influence over the field of reality, because this field, the reality, when I'm saying reality, is really a field of energy. It's a potential energy that's manifested into matter. Now, who's doing the manifesting? It's consciousness, it's the mind, it's the all seeing eye, it's God, source. It's, in yoga, it's explained a different way where it comes from non physical down to physical, which I can't believe I'm forgetting that whole thing, but that would take me a few minutes to explain. But there's something that's controlling that. And those of us who are in the highest level of alignment have the most power within the field. So the way that fields work is, a field by definition is uh space that everything within it is the same. All right. It's like a lake is a body of water. It's defined because it's like all of that water is sitting there. You took that up into space, and instead of it being water, have it being like a frequency of energy, then that whole field, that frequency is all the same. It's like a lake, but like a frequency of energy. And that's a field. Now we're all emanating these fields from us. We're emanating it from our heart mostly. And our heart center is interacting with fields of energy. Now, when one field interacts with another field, the stronger field is going to overpower the weaker field, and it's going to harmonize the weaker field. And yes, it might create a new field, but the stronger field is going to have the most influence over the weaker field. Remember, if you're joining right now, I'm talking about how to steer through realities. So as you are interacting with the fluid field of reality around you, the only way to have influence over it is to be a stronger field of energy. Now, how do you become a stronger field of energy? Coherence. Coherence means that you are in alignment, that your thoughts are in alignment with your emotions, which are in alignment with your actions, which are in alignment with your relationships, which are in alignment with your creations. And your creations is essentially what we're doing here. We are creating reality. That is the purpose of our mind. That is the purpose of our consciousness. Did you guys know that I studied psychology in school? I have a degree in psychology and exercise science. Um, we know what the brain is scientifically. All right. I'm going to say mainstream science knows what the brain is. We know what the compartments of the brain are, but mainstream science hasn't really decided what a thought is or what a memory is. And I have a gnosis is because those things, that part of us that we view as I or me, that doesn't actually live inside of us as a physical piece of matter, which is also how the Mandela effect can be possible. Because if reality itself is changing and our brain is part of this physical reality, then our memories, if our memories were tied to our physical brain, would also change as reality shifts. You understand that? So, an argument that people like to say is, well, if reality shifted, then our memories would shift as well, which is savvy and a conscious point in this discussion. However, if our memories and our thoughts do not reside within the physical structure of our body, then it would make sense that everything changes except for our consciousness. And our consciousness can remember, hey, everything's a little bit different now. Back to alignment, because I'm getting off tangents. Alignment, the Heart Math Institute terms it psychophysiological coherence, and they're talking about the psychology of the brain and the physiological psychophysiological coherence. So it's like brain, body, heart, emotions all in alignment. And in layman's terms, what that means is what you think is best. All right. It's like where you are most harmonious. And when you think about what does harmonious mean? It means, yes, it means pleasurable, joyous, satisfied, love. If you think about like what that means for you, what is perfection? Because perfection doesn't actually have like a good or bad connotation. Perfection means that the pieces fit. So when you think about when I wake up today, what is perfection? What is satisfaction? What is excitement? And then, so if you have that, and then you go ahead and do something that's not that, then that's an example of not being coherent, not being in alignment. That means that your field of energy is a little disruptive inside. It's got some weakness in it. And reality itself, you're going to have very little impact on if you are out of alignment. If you are in discussions where you're forced, either through your volunteer effort or because you signed up for something like a JOB and you are forced to do something, say something that you don't particularly find enjoyable, satisfying, loving, harmonious, perfect for you, then you are out of alignment. If you are in relationships that maybe served you and the other person 10 years ago, and right now it's not, but you're staying in it because you don't want to go through the uncomfortableness of renegotiating the contract of of the relationship, then you are out of alignment. You will have very little impact on reality. And the TV commercials that you watch are going to have extreme impact on you. Things like Hitler, who's that man was perfectly in alignment. Perfectly in alignment. He knew his mission, he knew why. He rallied people around him. Every conversation that he had was in alignment to his intentions, and he was able to influence a lot within this physical reality. Now, some say they lose the war. We can't exactly tell what history is because history's fluid, right? I'm not condoning killing millions of people. My that's not where I find alignment. However, there's no argument that if that happened, that was his truth, that was his acceptance of what needed to happen here. Now, there's stories that he got killed. There's stories that they actually did invent a time machine and they escaped through the time machine. I think it's called the Bell Ship. If you want to look that up, I think somebody I feel like wrote a book called, or wanted to write a book called Hitler Went to Heaven, something like that. In the raw material, which I think got popular because they just put it on Audible, uh, Hitler's talked about in there, and how he's in a higher density than we're living here, and that he actually did ascend out of this reality because of his service to self actions that were extreme. Somebody like that does a lot for the world. It's a lot of awareness that they bring to the rest of us. Even if the actual actions are horrible, it stimulates the rest of us to ascend. And so we don't normally think about characters like that throughout history or in our textbooks because can't really know if it actually happened that way. We don't typically think about characters that are like Genghis Khan, that are killing and raping and pillaging, and we don't typically, or even just like the petty thief on the street. We don't typically think about them as serving ascension, but they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here. It's a perfect part of the equation of life, and they stimulate the rest of us to be more careful, be more aware, maybe even be more charitable. If somebody gets jumped on the street, it causes 10 other people, friends, family, strangers, to open up their hearts and give. It does bring a cohesiveness to the rest of us. And the only wow, that's crazy. I got kicked off of TikTok live because I did something to violate the community guidelines. All right. So, oh, Solar's howling. Can I close this? Can I close this thing about Mandela effects steering through realities? I don't think so. So harmony of your field allows you to steer reality because your intentions are matching, your mindset is matching, your emotions is matching your actions, and you can only be in a reality where all of that is within alignment because your magnetization of yourself is so strong that it will repel what is not you and it will attract what is you. There's a law. What is that law? There's a law that defines this. The law of, I think it starts with an L, but I can't think about it. But I mean, there's like attract like things, but there's actually a scientific principle about this. So the whole reason why I do everything like Creator of the Week, like Skillful Psyche, like work with Purium, where I teach people self-development, I teach people leadership skills for free, in an active environment where they get to practice and learn in real business settings, is because I feel like everything that I do is helping people process their life and strengthen their field of reality, strengthen their field to impact reality, because I strive to live in other people's dreams, other people's dream world, as opposed to everybody else's complaints and nightmares. So I choose to empower others to shift reality to their intentions. And that's how we get power. All right. So there's let's hear from somebody who wants to come on. I'm going to give this I actually just accepted him. I don't know if he's still here. You're representing LA?
I'm not representing because there's no reality. So it could be Al or it could be La.
Allah.
Allah.
Allah, 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 Allah.
Yes.
Every,
How are you today, Rob?
good. Everybody, this is Michael Siddell, yogi, Toronto. He wouldn't define himself as a yogi. He's probably going to correct me on that too. But you are. What's your Instagram?
Happy Abundant Yogi.
So he does define himself as a yogi.
I think you don't know what it is. For God's sake.
Hey man, you're confusing me with reality isn't real. So
Changing realities. That's the Mandela effect. I used to be something and now I'm not.
yeah. So what you bringing to us today?
Well, I think this becomes a very convoluted discussion because of terminology and semantics. Because
Because your Wi-Fi isn't strong, or is it my Wi-Fi? Can you guys hear me still? Looks like we lost Michael. All right. Hello.
Hello,
Who are you?
my name is T.
T. What's up?
Oh, not too much. I don't know why I'm in this conversation.
Yeah. What's the favorite book in the bookshelf behind you?
What is it?
What's your favorite book out of all those books?
Probably Beetle Palace.
What's that about?
It's a Native American story about. Oh my gosh, it's been so long since I read it.
You said Fatal Palace?
Bingo Palace.
Bingo Palace.
Yeah, it's this one right here. Did you see it?
Yeah. All right. So at least you came on here and gave everybody a book recommendation, but you can't remember even one sentence about what it's about?
No, it's probably been about once I read it.
Okay, let's do process of elimination. So we know that it's probably not about. Is it about tennis?
No.
Okay,
No,
so what's
it's
it about?
the life of a Native American woman, I believe, and a journey that she's on. So
Amazing. Well,
that's all I can.
yeah, I like Native American. There's a book I read called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a very long book, and that had a lot of interesting cultural philosophy and ways to live about Native Americans, and it was amazing. Well, all right, I'm gonna bring someone else on then. Take
All
care.
right. Thank you.
Bye bye. I don't know how to get you off though. All right,
I'm back.
what's up?
I'm back again.
Give me a point. What's a point? I have a question for you. There's this, I don't know if you heard me talking about going from non-physical to physical from a yogic perspective.
Unmanifest to the manifest.
Okay.
So unmanifest means there's no sense of time, space, any human boundary that you can, in terms of language, doesn't exist in the unmanifest world. It just is. Consciousness itself has chosen to descend itself into the manifest world, which is us.
And then doesn't it go through some filters?
Well, at some point in time, it's called Maya, which is
Maya, less illusion.
represented as let's call it a veil. Okay,
Illusion.
what Maya really is this sense of there becomes time. So there is a restriction, right? There becomes space. There is a restriction. So there's a restriction in this consciousness as it manifests itself down into our reality, the manifest world. Because in the unmanifest world, there is no time, there is no space, there is nothing. It just is. Which is why, in terms of your conversation earlier, which I was saying when we first touched base here, and I got kicked off.
And then you went to a different dimension, so be careful this time.
It becomes a very difficult conversation about realities because the words we're using don't actually give it justice to what it is. So, as you know, there is no reality. So then how can you be steering reality if there's no reality?
Right.
You can't be steering.
Right.
It can't happen.
I should have defined that.
It becomes much more limited. That's what Maya is. It's a limitation of of consciousness, right? So, as I'm listening to the conversation, we can't help but use the words we know to try to describe something, but then it loses its context, right? Because, well, I'm steering my reality. Well, you're not steering reality because there's no reality. You're just in a situation. You're in a moment, right?
That's the matrix that we create through our understanding and our
create
words.
Our own situation, our own matrix for us to feel comfortable in. And in terms of the energetics and coherence, so we affect our coherence by our activities and who we associate with and who we challenge. But even that, if you think about it, is not real.
Correct. And that's a very welcomed and perfect disclaimer to all of this. No, it is. Because I'm speaking at a certain perspective point and almost like offering another perspective point, but it's all just a perspective that we're making up. And it's a limit.
Right. Every perspective you have, you're creating yet another so-called reality.
Right.
Right? But there is no, so it's just another perception. And this is where it becomes very interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to end it there.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Your stream will stop immediately and you'll no longer be live.